Very, very exciting to be here. We've, as PhD, we're very proud that we've been doing this for 7 years, our 7th year of doing it. We're very proud to have been part of every single 360, and we love doing it because it's a brilliant platform, and it's a brilliant platform for conversations, and that's what we're going to have today. We're going to have a kick-ass conversation about humans and about technology. And I say hello, Umbrella Land, because just over 7 years ago, I was having a beer in the Hollywood Hotel with Tim Burrows. He said, so I'm thinking about having this conference, and we're not quite sure what we're going to call it. And I said, don't worry, I've got it. Umbrella Land. Right? It was almost like La La Land, like 7 years ahead of its time. Umbrella La Land. Yeah? Tim didn't go with it. I'm not going to lie, right? He didn't go with it. But he did create, and the people around him created this great platform. So let's use it. And let's talk about how humans and technology are coming together. So change. So humans, technology, change. The thing about change is that people tend to think that change is linear. We think that things are going to be the same in 12 months' time as they were 12 months ago. We think that things are going to be the same in 5 years' time that they were 5 years ago. That's not the case. Change isn't linear. Change is exponential. And because technology is changing in an exponential way, where we are in a year's time is going to be much further on than where we were a year ago. Where we are in 5 years' time is going to be unimaginable from where we were 5 years ago. And over the course of this century, we're not going to see anything like 100 years of progress as we're used to it. What we're going to see is something more in the like of 20,000 years of progress. And a key part, I know, it excited me as well, Alex. It was like, you're right. Okay, I mean, I know. I wrote the chart, that felt the same way. Huge amounts of progress. And that was Trumpian. That was very Trumpy. Huge progress, much progress. We're bringing progress back. Make progress great again. So, enough of that nonsense. So lots of progress, right? And that's doing something really interesting. What that's doing is it's changing us. Technology and progress is changing what we do and how we do it. The question, though, is what drives us? If we're seeing these huge leaps in technology, then why is that? And we get that because any technology that gets sufficiently adopted by us mere mortals does so because it drives us to a very specific state. It brings us closer to more information in more ways. It brings us more experiences. It connects us to people. It closes geographies and makes them closer together. It takes us towards a state of abundance. What major successful technology does is unshackle us from the limitations of time and space and takes us closer towards that state of abundance. And when it does that, something really interesting happens. It means that we're in the driving seat. We are driving this change. We are driving this agenda. Technology is just the liberator of a very human story. And that's what this session is about. This is not a story about technology. It's a story about people and how we change as technology becomes an ever closer part of us. So the driver of us, and then something very important happens as a result of that. As a result of that, technology is turning around and starting to look us back in the face. And that's the point of this session. What happens when the technology we create is no longer satisfied with responding to our requests, or is no longer happy with surfacing information as and when we want it? What happens when that technology gets smaller, gets more implantable, gets screenless? What happens when it becomes so invisible that it's merged and it's become part of us? What happens when it's no longer enough to use technology to wear a new sense, but instead we use technology to have new senses, to have new capabilities, to go beyond what we currently think of to be human, to be more human than human? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And what are the implications for the people in this room? What are the implications for marketers and communications and how we build brands and how we grow businesses in a merged world? This is a huge task, and it's an exciting one, and we're the generation that gets to do it. And so this session is about embracing that, because this merger between humans and technology is going to happen. That is not our question. That is not our choice. Our question for every single one of us is, what do we want to do about it? And what role do each of us want to play? Will we let the merge happen to us, or will we be part of making that merge happen? So this is Merge. Thank you very much for being here. It is the end of a very kick-ass full day, so thanks for making the time. Merge is what we're here to talk about. I'm going to give you a very brief overview of what Merge is, and then we're going to see a documentary film. That was a really bad one. Then we're going to see a documentary film. Very good. Documentary film. And then we're going to get to the meat. And then we're going to get to 4 amazing, brilliant people who are at the forefront of the merge. 4 people who are creating, engineering, and making technology that is at the very forefront of the merge. And we'll talk to them about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and the state of play. What is the state of the merge right here? So let's fly through this. 5 stages. It began around about 1950. Stage 1 of the merge, 1 of 5 surfacing. In the 1950s, through the late part of last century, we surfaced information. Information existed before then, but we couldn't access it. We couldn't surface it. We transacted, we consumed, we did things, so there's no data. Middle of last century, that started changing. The merge began when we surfaced information on screens. We built computers, we built the web, we commercialized the web, which means this whole enterprise is ad-funded. Don't you people forget it. You are ad-funding the future, right? So we commercialized the web, which enabled all of this to happen. Stage 2, and so we organized that data for fundamental technologies as we changed the century. We built browsers, we built search engines, we built apps. And we use those fundamental technologies to organize that information, which enabled the stage where we are right now, which is just extracting it. But extracting information is possible because of data. And there you go, I said it 5, 17, and 32 seconds. I said data. To be fair, it took me 17 minutes to get there. I get credit for that. The thing about big data is we're terrible at it. It's not designed for humans. Not good, right? 0.5% of all the data that's being created, 2.8 trillion gigabytes, and we use barely any of it. It's not human food. It's not food at all. And that's why big data is a bit like teenage sex. Everyone talks about it, but no one really does it. And so because everyone else is doing it, we just talk about it. Oh, yeah, I've got a big data strategy. What's your strategy? Oh, it's big data. It's like, oh, right, it's it. How big is it? Oh, it's big. It's like big, big, huge. Huge data strategy. In fact, we don't call it big data in my company. We call it huge data strategy. And we use huge data to do different things. We don't use data. Machines use data. So machine learning is the fundamental underpinning technology because it thrives on big data. It demolishes it. It devours it. That's enabled stage 3, extracting information. We are in a golden age of extracting information, extracting utility, extracting usefulness and entertainment. And we now can't live our lives without extracting that information. What happens next is that technology will start to anticipate it. Within half a decade, technology will no longer respond to our requests. It will anticipate those requires. It will anticipate those contexts, and it will anticipate what we need, and it will surface it up for us. Once you get through that little puppy, all that remains is a bit of elevation. And we elevate. Don't give it long. Just hold on. Stay fit. Stay healthy. Look after your body. It's the only one you've got to live in for the moment. 2030, we elevate, and a new generation, a new kind of human will emerge. Technology will have merged with us. It'll be part of us, and it'll be inside us, and it'll be inseparable from us, and a new state of being. This is what you're going to see in the documentary, those 5 stages. So welcome to day 24,783 of the merge here in Singapore on the 8th of November. We are more than halfway through, right? So We've already spent half our time. We've got to really get going, okay? So we're more than halfway through the merge. And these are the 8 fundamental technologies as we see it that you'll see in the documentary. So when you're watching the documentary, these are the 8 fundamental technologies as of now that are driving the merge. New ways of communicating and messaging through bots, sending levels of VPA, ambient AI, creating next generation of wearables, but then also next-gen hearables, a whole new way of being able to communicate without screens, intelligent layers then being created, the web becoming not information but experience because of first generation and true generation mixed reality and the VR web. That's what's coming in the documentary. So buckle up, settle down, enjoy the documentary, and as you're watching it, please remember this is your story. This is not technology's story. It's yours. So as you're watching it, remember that there's nothing that you can't imagine that can't be done. There's nothing you can't imagine that can't be done. So buckle up, settle down. This is Merge. No worries, Judith.
These days, we can perform tasks that magicians couldn't have imagined 50 years ago. Armed only with a tiny device that fits into our pockets, we can access a lifetime's worth of information in an instant. We video call from anywhere we are, and we share our thoughts and experiences with the world. But we're just getting started. And the most astounding part of all this technological advancement? The speed at which these and new opportunities and experiences are emerging. This super-fast technological development can sometimes seem like an entity of its own, with its own mind and its own agenda, seeking to close the gap between us, fusing the virtual and the biological, seemingly to merge with us. This merge will radically reorganize almost all industries, especially marketing.
Technology has affected the way that we process the world. For millennia have had a specific set of sensors that we are processing in our experience. And now suddenly we have a bunch more.
Technology is obviously becoming more and more pervasive and more a part of ourselves. If we leave home without our smartphone, we're going to turn around and go back and get it. It is that crucial to our daily functioning.
These revolutions we've seen in information services are going to come to basically everything we care about.
It's staggering to realize how drastic the changes are going to be in society over the next 15, 20, and 30 years.
The rate at which technology is increasing, it's only a matter of time before it's taking the form of a tattoo or a tiny implant.
You have to step into uncertainty. The very place that evolution says don't go, that's the only place you can go to adapt to a changing world.
We are good at adapting. We are resilient creatures. The issue is how well we are going to adapt.
The next 3 decades will be the most technologically accelerated in human history. Advances in artificial intelligence, combined with radical breakthroughs in hardware, will usher in a whole new era. And smartphones? Just a stage on the most extraordinary journey ever.
We are carrying in our pockets the equivalent of a supercomputer, and it is with us 24 hours a day. Today, now people are spending more time on digital than they are on traditional media. They're spending more time on mobile than they are on traditional desktop, and that is just growing exponentially. And so as fast as we predict the growth, we continue to underestimate the importance and power of mobile.
Your smartphone is 1 billion times more powerful per dollar, per euro than the computer I used when I was an undergraduate. And we'll do it again in the next 25 years.
Our smartphones have now become the remote control handsets for our entire lives.
If you actually stop and just watch people looking at their phone more than they are what's around them, they've been able to adapt.
I think people forget that even 3 years ago or 5 years ago, they weren't doing that. People are increasingly used to just absorbing the technology and just going with it.
And every time we do so, we create data. Page visits, clicks, reviews, blogs, comments, photo uploads, video uploads, check-ins, background location, social posts, and yes, purchases. This data is overwhelming for humans, but machine learning artificial intelligence, or AI, has lapped it up. Search engines are smarter than ever. Mobile penetration is widespread, and connectivity is fast and reliable in many parts of the world. But add dramatic developments in machine learning, and a new phase entirely emerges. One where we're not just organizing information, we're also extracting new meaning from it via operating systems, semantic search, and cognitive assistance.
Virtual assistants are just beginning to understand language, so you can talk things over and tell it what you want. They're not perfect yet, but that's going to be the big threshold, I think, over the next 5 years or so.
For years, we've dealt with computer-generated call centers and the frustrations of that. And I think the idea of the sort of chatbot or the virtual personal assistants is taking that to a next level. Adding sort of almost like a human-like element to it that makes it feel like you're interacting with a human, even though you're not.
People start to expect more from technology. They used to be satisfied with, tapping through a smartphone, looking at through different menus and options. But now everyone's fed up with that. They want to be able to just get to stuff more quickly.
VPAs will increasingly step out from screens and embed themselves in our broader world. And brands will need to achieve cut-through beyond the screen as speech becomes the dominant way to search.
Virtual assistants will be able to talk things over with you. We'll understand the meaning of documents, so we won't just be searching for words, we'll be searching for meaning.
The whole development of chat-based AI and VPAs is one of the next big kind of landmark developments for brands and for marketeers. This whole notion that you can begin to have a more kind of verbal, automated relationship with a brand is obviously very, very significant. But I think for brands particularly, it highlights a real evolution in how they think about themselves.
Brands need to start thinking of what is the personality of their brands if you give them a voice. There has to be experts who can give an identity to brands that are in an audio manner, not in a visual manner, because all we've done so far was visual. We think of the color of the face. We don't think of the voice and the sound. And that's a whole world that we need to start exploring.
As smart objects become more convenient and prevalent, we will become walking, talking data points. Our homes, our clothes, our cars, even our bodies, all hooked up to the web, and every object from a toothbrush to a car, generating its own stream of data. This is IoT, the Internet of Things.
And the Internet of Things is really just about saying there's all of these new things that are becoming connected and real-world technologies that are being installed. And what applications do you build on top of those as brands that are either going to make people's experience of the space more interesting or more useful? And then from a brand perspective, how are you going to get more data about your consumers, have more direct connections, and ultimately be able to behave slightly differently? So you're still very much at the early stages of creating really the connected infrastructure. And then the next thing that needs to happen is around interoperability and making sure that these systems and these platforms can speak to each other.
And can actually, in the aggregate, tell me things about myself that I might not know. I get the most hours of sleep at 67 degrees, but if you connect an IoT device to your phone, if you connect it to a Muse tracking EEG, if you connect it to something that's tracking how much I roll around in my bed, I can get that data and I can learn about myself with my house. And it's sort of creating this really interesting network of intelligence with my space and my body and myself.
The technology will become more and more predictive, more and more seamless. Actions will happen before we realize that we needed them to happen. A very simple example would be, I come home and my alarm system turns off.
If you look at the two main areas that are impacting brands right now within the IoT space, the first one is packaging, turning your products into digital media touchpoints. If 2 billion people a day buy or use Unilever products, What happens if all of those 2 billion items are interactable? There's 2 billion new data streams with 2 billion new consumers that you didn't know much about before. Then the second one is around smart spaces. So not just about your product becoming smart, but also the space in which your product lives becoming more intelligent. And that's quite a really interesting jumping off point from a brand's perspective.
The boom in data and the urge to extract its hidden meanings is leading to a gold rush in machine learning. Massive advances in speech recognition and in areas such as machine vision, which is essentially getting computers to see objects, will offer exciting possibilities for brands. These learning algorithms, also known as neural networks, will light up the data in exciting new ways. We believe this area will become increasingly contested in marketing as brands and agencies rush to snap up data sets and develop new algorithms to make sense of them.
It all comes from data. So how do you capture data? That's the first step. And also, once you capture the data, how do you analyze that data and then have a system that learns from that data? So eventually it will help you get much smarter with your fans and followers. I think that's an area where brands need a lot of guidance at the moment and also solutions.
The creative community can have inputs around what people might have a propensity to do, when they may be in the market to buy a certain product, what are their prior product purchases, and suddenly you can combine that data and that science with incredible creativity to connect and be more relevant and useful to people than we've ever before had to be.
And once the data is organized to better answer our needs, the next logical stage on the journey will be to actually anticipate them. Machine learning AI will give way to deep learning AI, which will independently analyze data.
When we finally start to leverage not machine learning but deep learning AI, there'll be a sense of anxiety that we will have a model, a product that operates a certain way, but we won't be able to explain how it's doing it.
The more knowledge the human being give to robots, the robots can do more things. At this moment, robots try to learn from human being, but in the coming future, the robots can learn from each other.
AI can actually develop different thinking patterns within one machine. And I think that's the thing that would develop a new way of thinking and in terms of science, in terms of art, or even creativity.
So technology in the form of virtual personal assistants, or VPAs, will begin to really understand us, our routines, our buying preferences, our dreams. They will start to run our lives, anticipate our needs, and know what we might do next. So brands will need to target our VPAs with their advertising messages as much as us, the consumer.
And then well, if I have to advertise to Amazon now, I'm really promoting myself to an algorithm versus a human being.
In order for brands to stay relevant, they need to be involved in the development of the personal assistants or the things that will be part of that decision making.
The deep learning super AI will coincide with advancements in wearables and mixed reality headsets that can place information and objects virtually into our personal world. Device technology will start to become a part of us. Implanted chips will make payments, while tattooed tech could allow us to operate what we see floating in front of our very eyes.
The next big epoch, if you like, in terms of the consumer products that surround us and really change the way daily life feels, will be mixed reality.
So mixed reality is bringing physical elements into a virtual activation or an immersive experience.
We will not be locked into this screen-based world. Information will surround us in a way that is much more effortless.
The internet until now has been largely about information. And suddenly with mixed reality, it's going to land extraordinary experiences, extraordinary visual, dramatic, sensorial experiences into the heart of our everyday lives. And I think suddenly that's going to mean that the internet becomes not just about information, but about these big experiences.
The physical world that we know around us and the economy that comes with it, large parts of it will be replicated in the virtual environment. So the products that we buy from potentially the manufacturers will need to exist in the virtual environment. How that manifests itself in terms of pricing, I mean, would you pay the same amount for a flat screen TV in a virtual world as you would in a real world when you know it doesn't cost the same.
Where all of this is headed is a convergence point where we kind of have an all-in-one device that enables us to perform all of these tasks that we've come to rely on our technology for. Whether that becomes a wearable or how permanent that actually is, it remains to be seen.
With mixed reality anticipating our every need and next-generation VR coming on stream, this stage will be the most dramatic yet.
I think virtual reality, its ultimate potential is to recreate the lived experience, to recreate the human experience. So how can we push the technology and the craft of creating storytelling in VR to the level of suspending our beliefs completely, so we actually believe that what we're experiencing is real. The big difference being with VR, you can transport someone anywhere you want. With AR, you can bring anything into the real world. What does it mean when you can, rather than spoon feed a message, you can actually put somebody in the center of your world and you can talk directly to them? That's definitely a shift in thinking.
As technology evolves, so our industry will evolve. This will be a whole new paradigm in advertising and marketing, and we will have to adapt. Some traditional agency functions will fall away, but new ones will emerge.
That whole kind of notion with things that are kind of around the corner or a little bit into the future, that you sort of wait until somehow somebody's got the solution. And actually, of course, the best way always is to get involved, start experimenting, start trialing, start beta testing, so that you can learn and do things in the way that's true to that brand and the way that you want to communicate.
These types of advances or technologies are going to require advertisers to really understand how the technology works and really understand how people are interacting with it and why, and then add value to that.
Marketers are going to have to adopt a test, iterate, and learn philosophy. They're going to have to be way more agile than they've ever had before.
It's a massive, massive change with huge consequences that go through every aspect of the consumer experience across multiple categories.
What we need to be aware of is that a large block of what we do will be best done by AI.
In our company, we're trying to teach the machine how to execute creative with AI because we can control the creative element and then let the machine know what kind of creative element looks like.
Whilst technology will be evolving with human help, humans will also be evolving with the help of technology. Once the everyday chores of life are taken care of, artificial general intelligence will change the way that we engage with reality itself. And biological breakthroughs will give us unprecedented control over our bodies and our minds. The human experience, elevated.
The quintessential application of that is medical nanorobots. Basically little robots that are extension of the immune system. They're just like T cells, except they will go after all disease and aging processes. That's one application of these nanorobots. The second one will be to go inside the immune system and provide signals to your brain that come from the virtual and augmented reality. So VR and AR from within the nervous system.
It's going to transform more into an application for things that we can download into ourselves. Kind of like an Internet of Things, but an Internet of internal things. Let's say your heart's not working as well as it should. We'll download 100,000 nanobots that can go in and scrub through what the problem is and essentially keep a checkup on you. Instead of going to a doctor's office when you're sick and trying to get medicine, why not be able to download from Virtual Store that medicine directly into you?
The vision is, for example, if you can imagine going into the hospital, screening your face and be able to instantly recognize who you are, bringing up your patient medical records, alerting your hospital that you've arrived, and then recommending some medications and treatments. And a lot of that technology already exists.
We're going to enter relatively quickly a period where there won't be physical communication, it won't be written, it won't be spoken. We'll be able to perceive something and transmit that directly to another human. And I think that this kind of metacognizance that can come from interconnected communication system is something that we'll probably first see in virtual reality.
We're already seeing ways of implanting electrodes that will then change the way that we behave. We're talking billions and billions of neurons that have more possible connections than there are molecules in the universe. This is no easy task.
As physical and a digital connects, how does it change your phenomenology? How does it change your feeling of where you are in the world, your feeling of where you are in your body? And does it create a different kind of connected intelligence? Not only between devices, but between brains and devices. Machines being integrated into human intelligence is something that's currently happening, is ongoing, is happening right now.
This future may feel like a distant fiction. And of course, some specific predictions may not come true. But what is certain is that technology is accelerating. The telephone took 75 years to reach 50 million users. TV took 13 years. Pokemon Go needed just 2 weeks. But these innovations aren't the only factors that will dictate the future relationship between humanity and technology. We are too. As marketers, of course, but also as human beings.
I would like to think that what these technologies, in fact the ones that we're actually developing ourselves, will actually give us better insight into ourselves. In nature, if you don't learn, you get selected out.
I think that these technologies that advance what it means to be human will fundamentally get us back to the core of what it means to exist.
It's going to happen, it's just a question of when. If you say, is it going to happen between now and the next 1,000 years? Of course it is. It's just a question of whether it happens in the next 5 years, 7 years, 12 years, 15 years. When it comes, it's going to be transformative.
That's why we create technology, to go beyond our limitations. You and I can't build this building with our muscles, but we created tools that leverage our muscles so we can create skyscrapers. We can now access all of human knowledge with a few keystrokes. We're going to make ourselves smarter by connecting to AI. We're going to merge with it.
As we spend more and more time in a virtual world, the gap between us and technology will continue to close. The virtual and the biological fusing together as technology and humanity ultimately merge.
Right, let's start to unpack it. Balash, I'll start with you down that end. When you watch that, and in the last 20 minutes, what kind of bubbles up for you? What excites you about this merge and this idea of humans technology coming together?
The music was very exciting, for sure.
We do like a bit of drama at
yeah,
PhD.
I felt like, especially that we talked about Thor yesterday. So, anyways, so I think, like, from a perspective of technology, it's very interesting how technology is going to make our lives easier. I think there is a lot of stuff in the documentary that is like, obviously like concepts and it's still hard to imagine in terms of how it is going to be actually taking part in our lives. I always think about that. I actually think a little bit differently compared to what we kind of like set the stage for. Technology is going to speed up and like all these things are going to get into our lives much faster. I think it is actually going to be a little slower, and it's mostly because of the. It's mostly because it is hard for us to change. I think in the past, if you look back, like technology took over a part of our life usually when there is something very inconvenient. Mm-hmm. So, like for example, like probably the biggest technological breakthrough in consumers' lives was the smartphone, right? In the past 10, 15, even 20 years.
It'll never catch on.
Sorry?
It'll never catch on.
Yeah, to the smartphone. Yeah, so it was a very simple problem, right? Like it was really hard to use the internet. You had to go to a desktop computer. You had to be like, you know, plugged in. It was a difficult thing. And I still remember the first iPhone ad 10 years ago when they said at the end, it's not web, it's the web, it's the actual internet. And I think this is, as you said, it's gonna be really hard to catch on because like the experiences are not that bad than it was before.
Yeah.
So I think, so what I was kind of trying to catch from the documentary, which is great by the way, is that like, which are the problems that all these technologies are going to solve in terms of that I can actually feel as a consumer or as like in my everyday life?
Yeah.
Because you know, like things are actually not that bad than it was. Like the internet is pretty easy to reach, and this is why like also, for example, bots is another interesting thing, right? Like I think bots are going to take over a much bigger slice.
And that's a big part of what you do, right?
Yeah.
So we'll come back to bots, and so that ability of fixing specific problems and addressing that, that's something that you guys are very close to. I mean, both of you have identified very specific issues and problems, and I'm serving this. Perhaps Kevin, if I go to you next, I mean, what surfaces for you in the documentary, and certainly on Balazs's point about finding new problems and interesting problems to address?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I mean, obviously, I loved your intro too. Like after you talked, I think it makes me feel like I could do anything. You know, anything
you can
could be
do
achievable.
anything.
But
you already are.
But I think, you know, to me, it's first of all, like watching the documentary makes me feel like I'm so behind, because there's like this seems like there's so much stuff that's coming, right? But I think one really interesting thing that, you know, we as sort of creators think about is sort of unknown, unmet needs. You know, I think when we look at these kinds of technologies, they seem ridiculous, right? But if there's truly a benefit to them, you know, the next generation of people that grow up with these things, right? To them, that's the new status quo, right? So I think oftentimes that's really where the test is, right? In that right now it seems like, you know, a lot of that technology is advancing very quickly, you know. But if, you know, is it sustainable? Is it really going to be integrated into people's everyday lives? I mean, if it can really reach that state, then I think many of these things that sort of this documentary is talking about could be possible, right? And I think as sort of technologists, as creators, that's oftentimes what we're trying to, that pinnacles is what we're trying to achieve, right? We're trying to introduce something new into the world, right? It's not about replicating a model. It's not about arbitrage. It's not about any of these things, right? It's about sort of creating a new need. Sort of, you know, the smartphone is a great example, right? I think, you know, 10, 15 years ago, you don't need to have this, you know, screen-based device in your pocket. But today, you can't walk out basically without it.
And I guess that point you made on consumer behavior is the key one for a lot of people in this room, and how it changes behaviors and therefore how you market differently to those people. And Joey, you know, you have several titles at Jingdong. One of them is head of ad tech. Presumably, you're very much focused on that perspective around consumer behavior and how technology is changing that, and how that can work for the advertisers who are using your platform, right?
Right. My major takeaway from the documentary is that, you know, we're talking about a lot of things changing, whether from we accessing, feeling the world, or we making decisions based on, you know, technology itself. But from a consumer point of view, we are all consumers. I think the two of the most important things that we did every day is first, you know, how can we get better information more efficiently, whether it's through visual or voice, right? We ask people, or we go onto the internet to search for it. So I guess right now, I think most of the innovation are happening in those fronts, whether it's through voice, through voice you can convey a lot more information more efficiently, and you can ask for more things. But then the challenge behind it is when the technology and the machine can perceive what you said word by word. I mean, what's the output of it? What does the technology, what can the algorithm recommend afterwards is the challenge.
And I suppose that voice understanding is probably something, Chelsea, that's been your world for quite a while now, right? Understanding how this amazing little fella can understand and interpret, what we say, but also what we mean, right?
I think from the documentary, I think the best part of this documentary actually is to me, it's pretty philosophy. Because they ask two basic questions. What's the definition about human being? How we define human being? And the second question is about what's the relationship between human being and technology? I may not fully agree with you. I don't think we have new need because we have new technology. I think from the very beginning, the human being's needs is the same. We never change. We want to communicate. We need some kind of emotional bonding. But just because of the different technology, the same needs has been satisfied by different technology. I think as what we do now, we create the human brain-inspired AI system. We adapt a lot of psychological models from human beings and combine with neuroscience. Integrate the computer vision, as you can see, and also the speech together. Try to bring the new interaction between machines and technology, but the purpose is the same. What we try to do is just bring the new relationship between human being and technology.
And I guess the point that both of you are making around that is that it's about how do you build technology that adds value in real world situations, and how do you build technology that makes a situation better? Because that's the point you were making when we spoke, Balazs, right? You were saying that the technology gets adopted only if it's better than what already exists, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, like, I think you made a very good point yesterday when we were talking about, like, if there is already a good interface exists, it is going to be really hard to change the behavior, right? And I think we got to a level where we got actually pretty good interfaces existing. It's the question of how we can, like, solve the issues that are still out there. And I think, like, we don't necessarily have to go that far. Like, small things, like websites. Like, people spend like 20 seconds on a website, right? Like, it's not a great experience. And it's just getting extremely hard to create a good website because there's so much information that you want to tell, how you're going to make it, like, you know? So I think, like, these are things that we don't necessarily think of right now because there's just so many, like, futuristic stuff out there. But, like, yeah, how are we going to disrupt the website? Like, the fact that websites still exist in 2017, I think pretty much the websites have to be gone at some point, at least in these current forms. So I think we really need to look into, like, what are the, like, if you're looking for kind of like what's the next step, or this is how we kind of like to look at this, is that, like, what are the things that still can, like, annoys us as, like, consumers? Yeah. And probably the answer for the next technology, or, like, not necessarily technological breakthrough, because these are interfaces, right? Like the iPhone was an interface, like the iPod was an interface. Like, the next interface, or the next basically technology that's going to change our life is probably there.
Yeah, and we've probably got a couple to look at on stage. So I want to next get into some of the specifics of stage 3 technologies. So we identified 8, and I want to get into them and talk specifically about what you do. But just before we get onto that, just one last question for you, Joey, because just to go back to the documentary before we move on to the specific technology, a lot of marketers in the room today who'll be going, that's great, that's cool, that's good. What are the kind of things I could or should be doing now? So if I left today and thought, right, I get it. Like, what from your experience of building the ad tech at Jindong, what are the kind of things you'd say to marketers to kind of start leveraging this?
Right. I guess, I mean, I'm not trying to analyze the documentary a bit, but I think I start to notice some trends. So basically, the technology that we're talking about can be divided into 3 types of things. Okay. One is new touch point, whether it's new screen, new ways, interactive ways of human beings as us interacting with the world, whether it's information, offline, physical stuff, or digital information. And secondly is the connection piece, where we basically can connect the intelligence layer or information to each of those touch points and device, right? And lastly, is what we talk about, AI or deep learning, where is the intelligence layer. Basically, it teach the new device what to do, right? And then if you're thinking about those, AI itself, if you talk about algorithm itself, is developing very fast. We have the best scientists of all of the world developing new algorithms. So I'm assuming, people like Balazs, they are trying to build a connection, piece. And then what left to marketeers is that, we're going to see some new channel, new touch points coming up, and the way consumers interact with those new channels and communicate with them is going to be totally different from what they are right now. So then, as marketeers, my suggestion is just to, firstly, don't be over surprised or be afraid of it. Just try it out the new channel as consumers, and then to see how can you deliver relevant experience through that channel.
So it's not, you can't just make more 6-second ads then. Okay, we'll get on with it. Okay, done. Right, let's talk about some of the technology. So I think, let's talk about Ollie first, because he's right there and he's being very patient. Let's have a little look at some stuff. We've got a short film, I think, to explain a little bit more about this amazing little thing that's right in front of us.
Morning, Jake. Time to get up. It's perfect weather for jogging. You can have 45 minutes and still be on time for your meeting at 9.
You'll be late, Gemma.
Have a great run.
Hey, Gemma. Good morning, Gemma.
Bye, Ollie.
Bye, Gemma. You look gorgeous.
The three-game series is even at 1 apiece after the Blue Jays stormed back in the top of the ninth with 12 runs to win the game 15.
Hey, Jake. There's a significant delay on the underground. Want me to call an Uber?
Yes, please, Ollie.
Uber ordered. It will arrive in 5 minutes.
So before we get into it, Chelsea, you told me that when you were building and developing Ollie, one of the, it's okay, no one noticed. One of your sources of inspiration were dogs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
I think in the documentary and also on the stage, we talk a lot about surface and the language, all the things. But as I say, communication is kind of very original human beings' needs. But think about our relationship with dogs. Dogs cannot talk your language, but you still put a lot of information on your dogs. So we think about, we start to kind of try to analyze this and think about what is the best way for human to communicate with the technology. Because chatbot, as you say yesterday, there is a lot of information gap because it's really hard to get to the context. But same with the dog. Dog cannot understand everything of you. So we start from this, how to bring the best user experience and let the human can have better understanding with the technology. So we create Ollie. The key things is we believe every people is different. And so you deserve have a different device. Your phone at this moment, same with my phone. Your computer is same with my computer. But your Ollie will be different with my Ollie, because Ollie will learn from you. Ollie knows your personality.
So Ollie the more I use and talk to Ollie, he'll become different.
Yeah. And also Ollie has his own way to express. It's not just about language. Just like a dog, you can see all the movements, all the LED will be different. It's something beyond the language.
And so there'll be a whole generation of Ollies that really reflect the personalities of their owners.
Yeah.
Do you call them owners, by the way? Are we owners? Are we users? Or are we best friends? Or best friend sounds weird. Don't call it best. It's like, I'm Ollie's special friend. Don't call it that. Wait,
I think that's really rely on your personality. Some people may be more bossy. I want to get the Ollie as my assistant. Some people maybe treat Ollie as a best friend. Yeah.
And what's been your biggest challenge today If you, as someone who's at the forefront of stage 3 technology, what's been the single biggest barrier or challenge?
Two parts. The first part, the challenge is interesting. I know many of the audience come from agency world. I have to say, you think working with creative people is hard. Now I can tell you, working with scientists is the most difficult thing in the world. I mean, we collaborate with the tier 1 AI researchers, but most of them, they don't have industrial experience. So to them, they're amazing about academia. But we also need to put a lot of effort to really understand the consumer needs and the consumer behavior at home. That is one of the biggest challenge. And the second thing is you may use Amazon Echo, you may use Google Home, all those kind of voice-based assistant already. But what we try to do is bring more layers to this robot, make it smarter. That's why we challenge ourselves and put 2 cameras and really enhance the computer vision. It sounds amazing, right? We got the speech, we got the computer vision together, but actually, these 2 parts, there are very few people try to merge these things together. This part is really, really hard.
And then, and Kevin, we'll come to Eyring next, but just on that point that Chelsea made, Balázs, about joining stuff together and joining different tech together, that's a lot of what you specialize in, right? And what are some of the biggest opportunities and barriers around, and actually, Joey, for you as well, what are some of the biggest opportunities and barriers around just joining all that tech together and making different things work together?
Yeah, I mean, so when we started up, we also started with the front end. So like, you know, all these platforms are front end for us. And basically what we realized that there is a major gap on the back end. So like smart devices, platforms can tell you what the weather like. They can play music from Spotify, etc. That's pretty much what they do at the moment. But like in order to be really, really useful, you need services. You need like you need to connect them to the real world, and there is a major gap, which is a much less exciting thing because you don't see anything. And like we were just discussing with someone that you know, if my uncle asks like what you're doing, and we're starting to talk about, we like breeding like complex JavaScript algorithms in TensorFlow for like backend. That's less exciting, but actually we see that this is the key to basically turn this into turn these platforms into an actually useful thing, where you can buy an air ticket, like a plane ticket through Oli, or I can ask her to you know, order flowers to my mom. Is that because if you're not connected to the services, then like the limitations make it much less useful. So we pretty much working on this integration layer, and I think this is, to be honest, like this is less of a business, less of a technology challenge than a business challenge, because you need to work with actual organizations like, you know, multinationals to like small businesses, which is challenging because you need to bring on board. Like it's challenging to work with scientists and developers and like creative people and like all that, but like working with, you know, like organizations is probably the hardest thing, because that's a lot of business development. You need to go through a lot of different layers of the companies.
And that complexity within an organization is probably something you can empathize with, right, Joe?
Right, I think I definitely agree with, you need to spend a lot of time actually connecting the smart devices to actual service. So think about, I saw a refrigerator just now on the documentary, but when people think about smart refrigerator, they usually put a screen on it and that's it, right? So basically you can listen to music.
Ooh, shiny.
Right? But I guess that doesn't solve the main pain point. What people need in a smart refrigerator is to understand, you know, okay, so based on what you're putting there, I as a refrigerator understand that you are a healthy eating person.
Yeah.
So then the next
more
time...
More broccoli, Stevenson. More broccoli.
Right.
That's what you need, right?
Right. So then the next time when you try to order some healthy stuff, the refrigerator might probably recommend some healthy, you know, goods to you. So then I guess that's what it really means by connecting intelligence layer to the front end or the hardwares to actually make it work.
And it has to be connected to the place where you order the food, right?
Yes.
Right.
Was there's that integration
Unless
with
it's
retail and changing
yeah,
retail
like
and
it
all
can
of
be
that?
retail, like unless it's the retailer who sells the intelligent
Don't get us started on the changing retail. We'll be here till tomorrow. Kevin, let's come to you, and let's have a look at Ori Ring, which is the bit of kit that you've got at the forefront of the merge, which is the hearable.
Yep.
Okay, let's have a look at that.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. I'll see you in a bit. Bye. So you might not have been able to hear that, but using Ori, I was able to have a call. And that's because Ori is a voice assistant ring that turns your finger into a smartphone, all through just a touch of the ear. But why? That's because the way in which we're using our devices is changing from a world where we use screens and touch to one where we talk. Now, Ori uses bone conduction. And bone conduction has been used in many medical-grade devices. We've packaged it in a way that it sends vibrations through your finger directly into your ear so only you can hear. And that allows you to hear and talk through just your finger.
Where to shoot this?
Hey man, and that's music. Love it. And thanks to bone conduction and the dual noise-canceling microphone, you can hear and talk, even in loud places. So check this out. Ori is perfectly private and discreet. Using it makes it feel just like a secret agent. And Ori is more than just a neat gadget for taking and making calls, because behind it is powerful voice artificial intelligence. Our friend Siri and Google Assistant. It puts them exactly where you need them. Think about all the different things that you can do. And one of my favorite, translation. All you have to do is just motion upwards, and you say, Ori, how do I say, where are the burritos in Spanish?
¿Dónde están los burritos?
¿Dónde están los burritos? And just like burritos come in different flavors, Ori comes in 3 different colors. I guarantee you, there's an Ori ring for every outfit and every occasion. And even better, Ori is splash-proof too. Look guys, I know how popular you are. And that's why you have the Ori app, because it helps you filter out everything else. And there's 4 LED lights that tell you what kind of messages are coming through. Come on. Let's hit the streets to see what people think of Ori.
Hey, Marcus. Oh, this is actually really clear. Oh my god! Oh, it's amazing.
I didn't find it. It's hard to find it.
Thousands of people have tried Ori, and we're finally ready to start making and sharing the Ori dream with the rest of the world. And with everything that's happened, I can't help but think of our inspiration, my dad. He also happens to be visually impaired. Ori doesn't just help the visually impaired access something they've had difficulty before, smartphones, but in turn, they have inspired us to use our devices in new, natural, screen-free ways.
I really want our venture in darkness to power the screen-free revolution.
Thanks for watching, guys. Remember to back us today, because one day with Ori, you too can find your voice.
Kevin Wong, everyone. Now, Kevin, Nick, I didn't know that's the B-roll you were going to use. So I very much feel that section of Merge was brought to you by Ori Ring. So thank you.
Thank you.
And invoices in the post. So I think someone should try it. Should we get someone to try it?
Sure. Yeah.
Let's get someone to try it. Volunteers to try an Ori Ring. Who wants to try an Ori Ring?
Okay, great.
Come on. The tramp at the front. Let's get him up. Come on. You could have dressed up for the occasion. What's your name? Where do you come from?
I'm Chio from Omnicom.
Oh, hi. Thanks for being here.
Great, thank you. So, basically, Neil's one of our co-founders. What we're going to do is we're just going to place this ring on your index finger. So you probably never had a guy put a ring on your finger before, but it looks it looks good. It looks good. Now just relax. So Emil's just going to guide your finger to the right spot in your ear. Yes. So there's a soft part of your tissue. You just want to block off sort of the outside sound. Yep, just like that. Yeah, so then when Emil starts to play a file, basically a vibration passes through the finger directly into his ear, so only he can hear. Yes? Can you hear?
The whole room is looking at you, Chi. Can you hear? For goodness sakes.
Yeah, so then...
You think he's joking, it actually does say that.
So discreetly sends sound basically as a vibration through his finger directly into his ear, and then when he speaks, there's a dual microphone on the ring. Then there's some simple natural language processing that's done on the ring that allows you to basically hear and control things on your smartphone. Wow. Great, thank you.
And you could hear that, right?
I was doubtful, but that is actually amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing stuff. Very good. Well volunteered. I'm pretty sure that you guys will hang around. So after the session, we've got about 15 minutes to go. But if anybody wants to stay back and have a try, I'm sure they can. I want to bring it back to marketing, which is what we keep on doing. I mean, clearly lots of applications. So it's very meta, by the way. Seeing you, it's like watching you. It's all very meta. You've already considered some of the consumer implications, but when you're talking to marketers, as well as beyond just selling to consumers, when you're talking to marketers, what are the kind of applications do you see for advertising for brands in terms of how they could use any kind of hearables as well as your story to connect and build brands in new ways?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think today we're sort of skirting around a couple different topics, right? I think one of the most important things that we always worry about at Origami Labs is really sort of how our user is going to use our product on a daily basis. That's the most important thing. Like, as a product, you need to, for us, I mean, we decided to focus very much on communication, right? Because we wanted to build a killer app that we thought that, users, when we talk about sort of voice artificial intelligence or sort of natural language processing, these are not terms that I think consumers understand yet, right? If you're going to put like an advertising line out there that, we're like the world's smartest voice assistant Ring, people don't really understand what that means. But if we can sort of deliver a compelling feature, for example, like the quickest way to send a text, right? Or maybe basically a Ring that can help you answer questions, things like that, then those are points that I think people can sort of understand and attach themselves to. So once you have that, once you have a platform that people are willing to adopt, then I think it opens more doors, right? So for example, like I think in this documentary, there's so much talk about sort of data gathering. I think one of the most important parts of sort of VPAs is the fact that you're gathering a lot of qualitative-based data. It's unlike sort of data that we've gathered so far. It's not step tracking data, it's not hard data, it's not this really quant-based data, but it's really sort of qualitative data about someone's life. I mean, the way you can put it is, if one day we can really master these sort of microphones that are out there today, right, we can almost start to SEO, like search engine optimize people's lives, right? You have like 95% of the time in your life that you don't spend online. Right, we're not getting a lot of that sort of qualitative data.
Right.
Right, and if one day, Ori or other speaker-based product can really reach that market penetration and really be more widely adopted, then you gain access to basically more information about the customer that you've ever had before.
But the onus on brands, and again, this was touched on in the documentary, is that presumably we've all got to give a lot more thought. Elder said it. We've all got to give a lot more thought to what our brands sound like, to what the kind of conversation our brands are going to have. When you talk to our brands, what are the kind of conversations? How does it sound? What is the whole tone of that? Because increasingly, that's what we're going to have to do in this world, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the really interesting aspects is sort of modern marketing. In the Hong Kong Merge event, one really interesting topic that they talked about was how today a lot of advertising has to be very direct, very personalized. The way sort of Google handles marketing or the way Facebook handles marketing, it's almost not marketing. It's almost like trying to provide something to someone that you think they need, right? I think so. In a similar way, like even if you use VPA as a marketing tool, eventually it has to be done in a really seemingly unobtrusive way, right? It has to be done in a way where when the user has a voice that's speaking to them, or when the Ring is notifying them, or when Ollie is notifying the user. It has to be sort of tangible and beneficial to the user.
And how is voice search and voice and hearables? How are they surfacing within Jingdong, Joey? What's happening there?
A couple of directions. So, I mean, right now, a huge amount of search on JD app, Jingdong app, already come from voice search.
Right.
And like I said, I mean, before you need to type a lot of things. You need to type, for example, if I'm looking for a jacket, what type of a jacket do I need to have, and what's the color, what's the occasion, for the jacket. But if I search through voice, I mean, I could say all of that within 2 seconds, and then I don't need to type all the things. And what comes after it is, I mean, when we understand what the consumer wants, we need to do a better job in terms of finding the right, relevant product, and to be able to rank it. So going back to the point of the documentary where you guys mentioned that in the future, probably marketers and brands need to market to algorithm, but not the app or front end itself. And then given what Kevin just mentioned, in order to develop, for example, a natural language processing algorithm, startups won't be able to do it because you need huge amounts of data. I'm sorry.
Never apologize for huge data. Huge data is what it's all about.
Right. You need.
It's like post-big data world. It's a huge data world, Joey. Don't apologize.
Right. And then, I mean, only a small. I mean, only companies with huge penetration can get those voice training data sets to be able to train that NLP layer, and that those companies might not be the same as the front-end company. So you guys, the startups that are building the front ends might be utilizing NLP module developed by Google, for example. And then as brand, you won't be able to market to that algorithm. You can't say, okay, let's pay a CPM of what and raise me to, 2 spots up. It will be impossible because that NLP language only understands relevancy. They only pick the relevant product. So then, I guess going forward, as marketers, if voice search is gonna come up, and it's gonna become the trendy things of consumers accessing the web, the intelligence layer is gonna be the one who determine, whether your brands will be shown to the consumers.
Well, I mean, let's stay with that. Let's look at the stuff that you're doing at Jingdong, a bit of the stuff that you're doing. Let's have a look at that video, and then we can. So what's it like working at a small startup?
It's quite challenging because you need to talk to those robots, you know.
Well, I mean, what's the weekly whip like? I mean, are you sat there and it's like going?
Right.
You haven't got a weekly whip, have you?
Yeah.
No. So for someone who anyone who doesn't know, I mean, just give us the 60-second of Jingdong, what they do, and how huge this logistics operation is.
Right. So we're basically the largest B2C direct sales e-commerce in China, and one of our top. So basically, we have like 258 active Chinese users using Jingdong every day, and then 258 million customers. 258 million customers.
Some of the back end doesn't sound very impressive to me.
Yeah.
You've got
Save the best for
258
later,
customers
you know?
a day. It's China. They can do better than that.
Right.
Okay, so 258 million people a day.
Right. 258 million customers. And then with those, we, understand their preferences, what they want. And basically, when you ask about the logistic operation, that is actually our core differentiator. We have our own warehouses, our own delivery fleets, our own robots, so then we can guarantee from, the customer place the order, we can guarantee the fastest delivery speed and experience across the last mile. So basically, we have a rule that we call Double 11, which means if you place an order by 11 a.m., you will get your order before you get off work that day. And then if you place your order by 11 p.m., you will get your package tomorrow morning. So that is what our own logistics system provides.
So what all that enables is basically 6-hour window on anything.
Yep.
That's what we're looking at.
Right, basically, and that helps to, the autonomous warehouse is really crucial because, for example, you can have the robot, like the dispatching robot, tell, on the order, when he reads the label, he knows where to send that package.
Yeah.
So it's going to be sent to the closest delivery station.
Yeah.
And the people who are delivery guy at the delivery station is able to deliver the package within like 1 or 2 hours. So, the whole intelligence layer within the warehouse actually makes sense. So I guess a key point here is when we talk about technology or intelligent technology going forward, it's beyond 2C or consumer technology. It also has to do with B2B practice that we cannot see in the back end.
And how far away are you guys from delivering what people ask for to anticipating what they need and stuff being in my building, and you guys are pretty certain that I'm going to be wanting to buy it that day? How far away are you from that?
So, right, this is a very great question. So what we are able to do right now is we can predict by product SKU, which is the product item level. For example, this specific watch, what's the orders going to be in for big regions like Beijing, Shanghai, or like first 2 or 3 tier cities. So basically, we'll be able to know, for example, for next week, how many orders are going to be placed on this type of product, so we can build up the inventory near that place before it happens.
Amazing. And amazingly, we're down the last few minutes. I'll ask all the panelists just to think about when we zoom ahead and think about stage 5 and that elevation, and we're thinking about nanotechnology, the Internet of Experiences, and pure mixed reality. Which of the technologies, and you can take it in any order, whoever gets there first, which of those technologies are you most excited about as we look into the far future, and why?
I think in our part, there are 2 parts are most exciting. The first is about the proactivity. I know we talk about the big data or the things, but at this model, currently what we do is that, like most of the company, they just analyze the current data and based on that to kind of get the conclusion. But through the machine learning, especially the deep learning, actually we can really predict what's the potential needs of the customer, of the consumer. For example, we can base on your pattern, current life pattern, and without your direct command, but give you suggestion what you should order. For example, use the Jingdong's case. You don't need to kind of remind yourself every 2 weeks you need to order the new orange juice, but we can learn your behavior and cause that and proactively to remind you to order the orange juice, the first thing. And also the second thing is back, as we say, how important about bring the emotion to the technology. We believe every users is different. So this kind of highly personalized communication is also very valuable for the future.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Humans 2.0, more human than human. What are you most excited about?
About the humans 2.0 or
Yeah.
about
The post-merged human.
The post-merge?
Cyber.
I guess NLP, natural language processing.
Yeah.
When we can really talk to the robots, platforms, whatever. Because right now, we had a long chat about this yesterday, right? That the problem is the context. So it's pretty good, like all the machines are pretty good, you know, in terms of understanding the words that we're saying, but the context is a different thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's the NLP.
So there's fluid conversation.
Yeah, that like. Sorry, go ahead.
No, good. And Kevin, Joey, what about you guys? What are you most excited about?
I think I'll be pretty excited about, you know, every place I go to, people understand me better as a person. So then everything I see is more relevant. So it's not like currently outbound marketing anymore. So everything I see is not driven by you know, paid marketing, but relevant to what I need. For example, so I would imagine AR, especially augmented reality, will take place and will become a big trend because it will help us, you know, access the world, see information about what's around us. And I mean, I'm most excited about those, you know, especially technology that will help us as consumers make sense of the world.
And that extreme, you know, personalized experience of the world.
Right.
Amazing. Kevin, round us up.
Business-wise, I think, you know, we sit very, very similar to Ollie. I think, you know, context-based things are not based off of command structure. But personally, I would say I'm most interested in things that are even further off, maybe things that, like the next thing beyond, I think, NLP would be mind-related things, because the mind works even faster than we speak. So I think, you know, telepathy, if somehow I could, you know, do something or multitask things in my head.
Just like
yes, like very
thoughts.
Xavier-esque, just like, you know, think about something and then something happens. I think, you know, I don't know if that's in the near future. You know, we're not in that space specifically, but I think, you know, if we're continuing to really talk about really exciting merge level technologies, I would say like I don't even know what you would call it, MLP, like, you know, mind language processing. I think that would be really, really exciting. So
I'm excited. Yeah. Brilliant stuff. That, amazingly, is all our time.